Eurasia. In other words, boom. When I tell you that the Italian merchants there in Florence and Pisa and Genoa and Venice were making their money in long-distance trade in the Mediterranean, please keep in mind that the Mediterranean, the eastern Mediterranean, was connected with the Silk Roads. There they are. Bringing goods from India, China, Persia, Central Asia, boom, right down to the eastern Mediterranean. Then, what the merchants did, which is pretty neat, is they would use the Mediterranean Sea, transport the goods back to whatever city you want, always making profit at every stop. And then they took these goods from the Silk Roads and they brought them through the passes in the Alps to the late medieval Western European fairs, in what today is called Germany and Belgium. And they made big bucks. So in terms of economics, when you go to see the David, you going to go see the David?
Yes.
Okay, when you go to see the David, just think about where did the money come from? The guy didn't work for nothing. To a large extent, it came from long-distance trade that connected the Eastern Mediterranean and the Silk Roads. Okay. Now we have the Crusades. Now we're talking about war. Now we're talking about people willing to sacrifice their lives from the beginning of the 11th century until the middle of the 13th century, where you had thousands, tens of thousands of people from Western Europe going to, in quotes, the Holy Land or the Middle East today, looking to drive out Muslims from the sacred sites of Christianity in places like Bethlehem and Jerusalem and other places in that area. Okay, so wars were fought, back and forth, back and forth. The final analysis was the Crusaders were driven back to Western Europe. The land stayed in, I wouldn't say Arab hands, that's incorrect. Most of the fighting was fought between Christian knights and Seljuk Turks who came from Central Asia and migrated westward into Anatolia. Saladin is one example. But in terms of the Renaissance, if you take someone off a feudal manor, a knight, a second son probably, or a third son, because he's not going to inherit the land anyhow. Might as well try to make his fortune some other way. And take him over to Aleppo, or take him to Damascus, or take him to Jerusalem. He's going to be exposed to so much that's really good in terms of culture, food, clothing, that he had no experience. Spices. No refrigerators, folks, at the time of the Crusades. Western Europeans are carnivores. Well, we're carnivores. What happens when you kill an animal? The meat rots. Well, you gotta, if you can still eat rotten meat to a certain extent, you got to kill the taste. And one of the spices used for that was the black pepper that came on the Silk Roads from what's today called Indonesia. And Crusaders brought back that taste that just increased the trade and the profit potential in the Mediterranean. Saladin right here. Saladin, these people were not Arabs, they were Muslims, but they were Turks from Central Asia. The next thing I think is really important is to focus on Central Asia, and I'd like to go here. And I'm in the middle of the 13th century. Can you all see that over there? Yeah? This is 1250 circa, and it says Mongol Yam. Yam is, that's the Mongol road system. So the Mongol Empire took over the Silk Roads. You can see them there in red. The Mongol capital, someplace up in here. But let me put it this way. You did not want to be a highwayman, a thief on the Mongol road system. Incredibly dangerous job. They didn't mess around. They protected, to use the roads you had to pay tolls, and they protected these roads every 20 miles with soldiers on horseback. You didn't want to be caught robbing people in the Mongol. It was very efficient, much more than the Silk Roads, much safer for about 150 years. And you can see the Mongol road system here and how it connected with the profitability of merchants. Where is it? Right here. In the Italian cities. But the Mongol road system didn't last forever. Nothing does. And then this is a painting of the Ottomans conquering Constantinople. And the important point is this, the cannon technology. You see they're towing this cannon, and they use the cannons to blow down the walls on the west. And conquered the Byzantine capital of Constantinople, changing it to Istanbul in 1453. So what? What does that have to do with the Renaissance in Italy? Well, first of all, it's contemporary. Okay? That's why this is so important. You take a look. Here are the Ottomans, here, 15th century, and there's Brunelleschi and Da Vinci. The Italian Renaissance functioning at the same time. So they were global contemporaries, but there's much more of a connection than just something happening at the same time. The connection is this. The Ottomans, when they controlled Constantinople, sat astride the trade routes that the Italian merchant families have been using for 400-500 years. They didn't cut them off. What do you think they did? Raised the price. They raised the price of doing business. Okay? Much more on that to come. Just keep that in mind. But in terms of the Renaissance and the renewal of classical scholarship, Roman and Greek, philosophy, medicine, science, math, and so on, aesthetics, much of the corpus of the Greek, I'm saying Greek, classical tradition was held in Constantinople. Not in Rome. Rome is Latin. Constantinople was, and to a large extent, Eastern Europe still is a Greek culture. So it became obvious that the walls would fall. Many of the well-educated Greek scholars took themselves, and they took the corpus of the Greek literature, and they ran for safety, and they ran to Rome, or they ran to Florence, or they ran to Genoa, or they ran to Venice, bringing with them much of the corpus of Greek, ancient Greek scholarship.